Need psychotherapy online or in person? Check out tinyurl.com/THT psychotherapy. The George Brassey Podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1@gmail.com.
Snowstorm forces Chicago Heights to close City Hall. Snowstorm forces Chicago Heights to close City Hall, Chicago Heights, Illinois. Snow was on everybody's mind at Wednesday night's Chicago Heights City Council meeting. The Chicago area was hit by a major snowstorm, and Chicago Heights had about 10 inches of snow dumped on it Tuesday and Wednesday. City Hall was closed Wednesday afternoon because of the winter storm, and garbage pickup on Wednesday and Thursday was also postponed. And students at Chicago Heights School District 163 went to remote learning Wednesday because of the storm. The mayor's chief of staff, Karen Zaranti, thanked city workers for their efforts. She told the council that city workers had been working round the clock to keep city streets open and safe, and would continue to do so throughout the duration of the storm. Fifth Ward Alderman George Brassey also lauded city workers, saying, "The snowstorm we have experienced in recent days has been terrible, but the City of Chicago Heights Public Works Department has done an excellent job in maintaining the roads during the snowstorm. Each and every resident's request that was submitted to my office was addressed in a quick and efficient fashion." Christopher Bykoskas, 4th Ward Alderman, added that Public Works is working diligently, doing a great job cleaning up the streets. In other business, Zaranti said that the city would be hosting its second Illinois Department of Public Health clinic offering vaccinations and booster shots 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday, February 12 at City Hall. The council also approved an ordinance renewing the city's employee health insurance policy and premium. The city expects to see premiums remain roughly the same. The city's benefits and insurance consultant told the council that he was able to negotiate lower rates with its insurer, Blue Cross/Blue Shield PPO, despite higher prescription drug usage by the 231 employees covered under the policy. Snowstorm forces Chicago Heights to close City Hall.
Before we get to the interview, I just want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Union Signs and Printing. Union Signs and Printing is a union sign shop located near Chicago, Illinois, that specializes in the production of corrugated plastic lawn signs used in applications ranging from political and election usages to unions, schools, and businesses. They also produce a vast array of other products, including American-made, union-printed t-shirts, banners, bio cards, literature, door hangers, business cards, and trifold. Get a hold of Union Signs and Printing at 815-740-1688 or find them on the internet at unionsignsandprinting.com. And don't forget to tell them you heard about their services on the George Brassey Podcast.
I'm so glad to welcome Brandon Harris to the podcast. Brandon,
how you doing today, George?
I'm very well, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing well myself. Just having a good day and moving forward here with some campaign stuff.
Well, it's great to have you on. Brandon, tell the audience, if they didn't know who Brandon Harris is, your journey in Illinois politics.
George, I had started at a young age, 16. I wanted to be defiant to my parents. I joined the Democratic Party for a couple of years, and at about 20, when I woke up and Steve Balich, a Will County Republican, came in and kind of pulled my head out and said, "Hey, kid, here's what you really need to be doing." I jumped up and listened to him, and we moved forward, and I started changing, my thought process, who I was working with, and I got into the Republican Party, and that year I worked on a presidential campaign, as well as I got in with Dave Carlson at the time, running for state's attorney. He's now a Will County judge, and started my campaign, life and working in politics that way.
Tell the audience a little bit what that's like, having parents who are really staunch Republicans, but you decide to be rebellious and go be a Democrat until your early 20s.
It was a really, really, really hard Thanksgiving and Christmas every year. My parents were pretty ticked at me. I did it out of defiance. I just, I was so frustrated as a kid being put under rules and regulations and just not understanding things. And, as kids, we're indoctrinated. My generation was the first that was heavily indoctrinated with no work ethic, no real goals. We were really trained in school that everything was to be handed to you. And it took me until my 20s to realize that. And it was really hard when you figure that picture out and you're talking to two hardworking parents that have small businesses and you're a pain in the butt kid. And when I finally kind of, came out and Steve pulled my head out and goes, "Hey, bud, you got to look at the sunshine." It was really awesome to be able to go back to my family and go, "Yeah, I'm working for the Republican Party." It was a great, for me, amazing change. And it really instilled values in my life.
I think your family is an example of why is a micro example of why our country is so polarized because of politics. What is your opinion about why polarized because of politics?
I think right now what's really happening is, and I'd say we're polarized, but I'd also say that we're being sold a bad bag of garbage right now. And for me, it's coming from the left. It's massively coming from the extreme left. We're being sold this bag of everything is canceled. It's cancel culture. Everything is negative. So even as of last night, I had just heard that they're having issues with the Dr. Seuss book now. I think that it's not just polarized, but our country is just being stunted with growth because we're so focused on things that do not matter. In my opinion, Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss matter less than our youth going to college and protecting our borders. And, coming up in a family like I did, I can understand where a lot of the youth are coming from. And this year at a lot of the rallies I had, talking to a lot of kids that were protesting against my rallies, I got to understand some of their values. And we actually got to convert a couple of the kids, one of whom is Brandon Solkar with Freedom Movement USA, my organization. He is my youth community leader now, and he just got out of AIT in the Army. When we met the young man, he was actually against us and on the opposite end.
What do you think the left's values are from a person who's on the right?
I don't know anymore, to be honest, George. When I was a kid, I thought their values were caring for people, the good old Union Democrat policy. Today, it seems to be socialism, far left extremes, taking away rights and, upping taxes. That seems to be a value set, and that seems to be the only value set I can really find when it comes to the left nowadays.
You grew up in Illinois. Illinois is a pretty deep blue state. What are your thoughts on the Illinois Republican Party?
I think the Illinois Republican Party has been far too split for far too long. Even just recently, like I had gotten a phone call with Chris Roper, who's running for Illinois governor. And I've also talked, to Darren Bailey here and there. We've got other names that are coming into the run. We've always got a lot of candidates for the same seat. We've always got our party infighting during primaries. We saw the same in the 14th last year. There was a lot of infighting in that district when we should have been working together, and we eat our young far too often. We need to focus on our youth. We need to really get to the kids. And again, I really feel that, though I can't use the same terminology Mary Miller did because she's getting nailed for it, there was a statement she made, and it was from an old world leader, and the gist of it is we need to get to the youth. And though I don't agree with the statement that was made, I do agree with the fact that we need to get our youth. We have to get to the youth. If we don't get to the young people, we're going to fall apart. I know, George, you're from the area. You walked into Lockport Township when I was 19, 20 and started getting into the party. I was the youngest person in the room by 16, 20 years. And the next person up was my mom. My mom was 20 when she had me. So it's the youngest person by 20 years. The youngest person from her was 50 years older than her. We need to get the youth into our party. And I think we started doing that under, Trump. I think Trump really got the young people riled up, and we need to keep them and, give them something to work towards.
Why do you think the Democratic Party can have a very diverse and long primary season, but they always end up uniting at the end? But the Republicans in Illinois, at least, and maybe nationally, struggle with that. Why is that?
I think if you've noticed the Democratic primaries, there are some that do get ugly. There's some relationships that are not mendable, but the majority of these relationships we see are mendable. One of the issues that I see us constantly walking into, George, we get bloody during our primaries. Republicans are good for the fight. I mean, that's something we're always strong for. We come out and we fight. But sometimes when we take that fight to our own back door, it doesn't help us succeed.
Who do you think are the most powerful factions within the Republican Party currently?
Nationally, Donald Trump. Locally, you've got George Pearson in Will County, who's doing a wonderful job, and he's kicking butt. You've got Sean Morrison in Chicago, who's a powerhead. I just don't see what he does outside of Cook County, or really outside of his own organization. Other than that, locally, if we're just talking countywide, we've got a bunch. Statewide, right now, I don't know. Jeannie Ives is a pretty big powerhouse. You've got Darren Bailey is a pretty large powerhouse. We've got some names here. Tom DeVore is another powerhouse, though he's not very political. He's more of an attorney using his skills for something. We've got a lot of powerhouses coming up. We've also got a lot of young influencers in the party across the country right now. Scott Presler being one of those powerhouses. Brandon Straka, though he's going through some issues, another powerhouse. Rogan O'Hanley. We've got these kids popping up all over it. I think not only do we have national leadership like Trump and some local leaders that are powerhouses, but we're in a generation now where something the Democrats aren't doing that we are doing is we've got these powerhouse kids coming out on social media.
Is there room in the Republican coalition for moderate and liberal Republicans in 2021?
I hope so. I hope we can learn, and that's something I've stood heavily behind. I wouldn't call myself a liberal Republican, but there's certain things, that our generation, such as legalization of marijuana, we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to fight about it. We're for legalizing it, leaving it alone. There's certain issues that I think are a generational gap, not so much a Republican-Democrat gap. I think the party's slowly coming around to some of these generational issues. And if we do, I think that'll definitely leave us room for more people coming in.
And what do you think the disconnect is with Republicans trying to communicate to young people? To me, what I feel is the biggest disconnect is Republicans have a lot of wealth, just per capita. Would you agree with that? Republicans are a wealthy group for the most part.
Oh, I definitely agree.
But when you're a young person, you're starting off with nothing. You're bridled with student loan debt. You have a poor economy. How can the Republicans make that pitch?
That's where the young people come in, and that's where, like I was saying a minute ago, we've got the Scott Preslers of the world. We've got the Rogan O'Hanleys. We've got these younger people coming in, and I think that's exactly how we're going to do it. And even at CPAC this year, Scott, a good friend of mine, was awarded, the Reagan Award by CPAC. They're finally noticing these young guys. They're finally bringing in these younger speakers. For 20 years, it's been, your average speaker age at CPAC is 45 plus. The last two CPACs, we've really seen them start to bring in some of these young influencers. And if we can use those influencers who are at the same position as some of our youth, I think they'll stop looking at us and going, okay, you've got everything. Why are you telling me how to do things? You don't know what you're talking about. To, okay, well, maybe this guy isn't as rich as the next guy, and he understands my issues, and he gets me. I think that's what the youth wants. They're looking for understanding.
How do the Republicans, which are a majority white party, stay competitive nationally in a country that is heading towards minority majority?
That is something I actually spoke on last night for a good couple of hours. I was out with Cornell Darden Jr. I went up to Chicago Heights to sit down with the Black Chamber president to go over these issues. And as I'm planning some campaigns, we had a good discussion. And one of the things that was brought to my attention was, if you've noticed over the last two cycles, again, we've had an increase in minorities in our party, so much so that we had our first African-American panel at CPAC. We had the Blexit movement under Trump, and I think we are making strides that way, but we have to be inclusive of all people. We can't, be the party of our noses in the air. We have to be the party of, we need to include people, we need to listen, and at some point we have to open our ears. And I think it's starting to happen in some areas, and I hope we continue to progress with that.
Tell the audience a little bit about your feelings on the QAnon movement, if you have any.
I don't. I avoid that topic. To be honest, George, it drives me nuts. I'm sitting here on Facebook today. I was working on setting up an event that we're doing. We're doing our own Illinois CPAC on the 20th downstate, and I'm working with a couple of my guys to organize it. And I saw March 4th, President Trump's coming back. In this date, Trump's coming. Trump's not coming back until 2024. He's made that clear. I think that the QAnon movement went from something to something else. And I'm not quite sure where these guys got their heads right now, but it's not in succeeding. And it's kind of frustrating to watch.
It's almost like they live in an alternative reality.
Oh, yeah, a completely alternative reality. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, when the president tells you, hey, I acknowledge that, Biden won, like it or not, even though we know there's something wrong in the back end there's nothing we can do and the courts aren't going to look at it. We're going to plan for 2024. When the guy you're fighting for says, hey, it's time to move forward, quit sitting in the past and let's look at the future.
You're a staunch Trump supporter even after the January 6th. Is that correct?
Oh, heavy Trump supporter. I completely think that January 6th was nothing to do with Trump. I think that was a pre-planned, staged event. I personally can't get into detail, but I got a visit over that event, as did many other organizers. And, when you get that knock on the door and you open your door and somebody wants to talk to you and they thought you were involved and you were in a completely different city and town, it's frustrating because they go after people based on your party and your values. They went after Trump for a snippet of a speech where he said clearly, we're going to go cheer on our people down there. That's exactly what he said. They twisted his words. They used it. And Nancy Pelosi and her crowd were looking for another reason, in my opinion, to impeach Trump and to try to go after him and keep him out of politics. And the fun part of it is it's not just the Democrats, it's also the establishment Republicans. We've had a good handful of them come out and go, okay, we can't have this guy. We can't control him. And for me, that's a huge thing. I'd love to see people in office that the government can't control. I'd love to see people in office that are there for what they say they're going to do and actually get it done.
In spite of that, you feel that Trump is not done with American politics?
Oh, no. He made it very clear at CPAC. He cracked a joke at one point where he said, I beat them twice. I think I'm coming back to beat them a third time. He has laid out his line that, hey, I'm going to run again. But I think at the same time, for a party as a whole and for the upcoming April elections and then the upcoming 22 elections, we need not focus on the election was stolen. We need to focus on putting precinct committeemen in, putting in, election judges, putting people into poll watch. We need to focus on getting the volunteer base up and focus on really getting to the youth. And we don't have much time to do it. If the party keeps half fractioned on, we think Trump's coming back the second Tuesday of February, and the rest of us are over here working, we're going to get nowhere.
Do you think the establishment GOP, the Mitch McConnells, the Lindsey Grahams, do they support Trump coming back for another run at the presidency?
Well, that was a public, in my opinion, probably they don't want to see the guy, but the public statement made last week was very clear cut and dry. McConnell said, and it was recorded on NBC and CNN, he said, hey, if he is the Republicans' pick through the primary, I will back him. So they're going to have to, though I'm assuming they don't want to.
Do you think Republican voters will give him another shot?
Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat. Anybody with common sense, after watching the first handful of days of Biden, over 50 executive orders, some of the decisions he's making, oh, yeah, I definitely think it's going to happen.
Brandon, what are two books that you would recommend to the audience that have been influential to you as a person?
The Art of War and 7 Habits of Successful People.
Let's talk a little bit about what those two books mean to you.
So
and who wrote.
I was a kid when I got the 7 Habits of Successful People. My mom got me the whole series. It was a dad and son that wrote many books, and I just had to write and rewrite so many times as a kid. Every time I get in trouble, I had to rewrite paragraphs from the book and, chapters of the book. And it really instilled some values into me. And then The Art of War really, for me, was one that I didn't get until about 4 years ago. And it was recommended by a gentleman named Jim Dodge, who had ran for state treasurer. After he had run, me and him opened a consulting firm and had done some political consulting with another couple of guys. And he goes, kid, you got to read this book. And it teaches you to really mellow back and look at your opponent for who your opponent is and to think rather than instantly react. It basically lays out a way that you have an opportunity to actually win. And I think it's one of the most intelligent books I've ever read. I bought it on Kindle, I think about 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago for $8.99. And I still refer to that book constantly and go back and flip through the chapters when I'm struggling with, an uphill battle or something we've got in front of us.
After living in Trump's America for 4 years and the tweets, do you think he read Art of War by Sun Tzu?
No, I think Donald Trump is, I like to say he's an old school businessman. He reminds me a lot of my grandfather, but he is a little overreactive. We all know this as Republicans. When he was tweeting, I literally sit back and go, come on, man, what are you doing today? Just hold on. Let's get you off Twitter. And Twitter, I think, was one of Donald Trump's downfalls, though it also helped build him a heavy base. That's where your QAnon folks come out of. That's where some of these people that are still living in a false reality are coming from, is that Trump Twitter lifestyle. And I think the man was an amazing president. I don't think anybody over 60 should have access to their own social media and be in a national position.
Brandon, where can the audience find you on the internet and learn more about your work?
Freedom Movement, or FMUSA.site or freedommovementusa.com. I run Freedom Movement. That is my main base. And we are actually just now starting up. We're going to be doing 210 rallies here this summer. We've already got 52 of them planned. We've been working with candidates across the state. We're going to be doing America First rallies, collecting volunteers, and getting them out to local parties.
Brandon Harris, thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thank you, George.
Have a great day.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023. Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.